Today is Tuesday, April 11th, 2017. I had been following a tip yesterday that I had gotten from a friend of mine, a French journalist who is living in Beijing, China. He wrote to me about troop movements, and it sounded like a very big story. Because I could not find a second source yesterday to confirm it, I held off on publishing that video. But today, elements of that exact same story happens to be the lead story on Drudge Report. I really hate getting scooped by other journalists on stories when I know I've got some big information, but I would prefer to take the time to double source major stories before I release it to you so that I don't have to later retract it because of inaccuracy. So now that the story is out, I'm going to go ahead and fill in details that the other media outlets are not giving you yet. I've been trying to follow these troop movements that are taking place around the world in response to President Trump's actions in Syria last week, and also with what's going on in the East China Sea. Folks, there is a lot happening right now, and it is all very bad. People have cried wolf so many times when talking about World War III that it seems that everyone has just become desensitized to the possibility that it could actually happen. But I am telling you now, listen to my report closely because there is a very credible chance of nuclear war breaking out soon. I'm going to present the evidence that I've gathered to you and let you make of it what you will. First of all, you need to understand the nature of the stunt that Donald Trump pulled to try to intimidate the president of China, Xi Jinping, when he visited this past week. Trump waited until the communist leader was here on U.S. soil without the protection of his own armies, and he took advantage of President Xi's vulnerability. Trump made the premier wait on him while Trump went off and launched this massive strike on Syria. Now, try to understand this story from the point of view of the Chinese president. When the United States launches a war against another country, other national leaders want to be able to get quick intelligence on what's going on. They want to be able to sit down in their war rooms, have their advisors brief them on what it all means, and if there needs to be any response from your own country. And beyond that, immediately after the Syrian strike, Donald Trump ordered the U.S. Navy to race to the Korean Peninsula, which is just off the coast of China. All while China's president is sitting there on his thumb inside the capital of the United States. President Xi Jinping was stuck at a dinner table inside Washington and was completely helpless to do anything. This was a very aggressive move by Trump. It was very calculated. This is the kind of behavior that is used in high-stakes corporate deals. When one side walks in thinking one thing is going to happen and the other side comes in with a whole army of attorneys and they try to intimidate and scare the other side. But you need to understand, this is not a business deal. Trump is wrong to treat this like a business deal. President Xi Jinping did not take this very well. It was very insulting to him to try and be intimidated. So as soon as he returned to China, Xi Jinping began preparing for nuclear war with the United States. We've got South Korea's online news outlet, Chosen.com. They are reporting that Xi Jinping has deployed about 150,000 troops to its border next to North Korea in response to this American aggression. So I then hopped over to a publication in Japan called Sankei Shimbun. I poured through their recent articles over the last handful of days. One of them I had translated on just Google, and it says that Trump's missile strike in Syria caught China off guard, that it shocked them. And because of Trump's unpredictable actions, China is concerned about what his intentions are with North Korea. So China is moving their army forces toward the Yalu River, this long yellow line here, to prepare for war. The news in Japan is also reporting that China is moving a lot of medical and backup support units to the North Korean border in anticipation of masses of fleeing North Korean refugees who might try to flood into China. Because if the Kim regime falls, this would cause a massive influx of millions of impoverished and unskilled refugees to try to get into China. And folks, if you think about it, this is exactly what the New World Order has been doing throughout the Muslim world to try and destabilize the Western European countries. They went into Syria, they went into North Africa, they went into these countries and they created chaos. They overthrew governments, just as they did in Libya, and they didn't replace it with anything stable. And in that vacuum, many people, millions of people had to flee. In the case of Europe, George Soros and others had already worked it out with governments to allow a flood of refugees from these Middle Eastern countries to go into the Western European nations, where they are there as unskilled laborers, they are impoverished, they don't speak the language, and it's a big deal. That is very much the situation that could happen to China if the Kim regime is knocked off. And so China is preparing for that. They fear that. They know that that is one of the goals of the United States, is to create instability in China. So they have put these 150,000 troops along the border to stop fleeing masses from entering their country. And they're doing this using their 16th, 23rd, 39th, and 40th group troops. They're massing along the border. The 39th and 40th groups are headquartered in Yingkou and Jinzhou, and that's in the Liaoning province. The 39th group is a heavy army mechanized unit, and the 40th group is one of China's rapid reaction groups. The Chinese army has also deployed a new airborne early warning system called the Kengjing to strengthen China's air defenses against the incoming U.S. forces or possible missile attacks. Now, here's the really scary part of this. If the reports I'm reading are correct, China has also deployed its Dongfeng 31A. These are ICBMs. They've deployed them into Liaoning province, which is the province that sits up against the North Korean border. These Dongfeng 31s are long-range, three-stage intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. They're designed to carry either 3 to 5 nuclear warheads, each with 150 kiloton yields, or the missiles can carry 1,000 kiloton yield thermonuclear warheads with penetration and decoy aids designed to stop anti-missile systems from being able to defend against the nuclear strike. So these are bad suckers. And that's not even, I've not seen confirmation yet, but I know that China also has Dongfeng 5s, which are considerably more powerful than the Dongfeng 31s. So let's jump over to nuclearsecrecy.com to use their nuke attack simulator. I want you to see what a 1 megaton bomb would do, which is what the Dongfeng 31 is. It's a 1 megaton bomb. I want you to see what would happen if it hit New York City. We'll select a 259 Minuteman warhead because it has the same 1 megaton yield as the Dongfeng 31. Watch this. A single strike with a Dongfeng could kill 1.7 million people instantly, with an additional 3.2 million people injured from the fallout. And over the subsequent 24-hour period, the radiation would affect approximately 9.2 million people. As of 2009, China had at least 15 of these Dongfeng 31s. And like I said, that doesn't include their Dongfeng 5s, which are about 5 times as powerful and could kill twice as many people. Virtually every single person in the target zone. Not only would there be the death toll, but when these nukes are set to burst in the air, which is the more effective way of using it, causes more damage to use an air burst. That would generate an electromagnetic pulse that would knock out our electric grid. Anybody who has read Lavoie Finicum's book, something about blood and suffering, I forget the title of it right now, that's the premise of the book, that there's been an electromagnetic pulse generated from the explosion of the nuke in the air before it hits the ground. Guys, what this would do is knock out our electric grid. Our financial system would collapse. All trucking and transportation would stop. Within 48 hours, the majority of America would begin starving. And within 1 month, tens of millions of Americans would be dead from the resulting food and medical shortages. Now, you may be wondering what range of one of these Dongfangs is. Can it hit America? Well, I'll tell you what the range is. It's 11,200 kilometers. And I'll show you this on the map. From its launch point in Liaoning province, the nukes could hit almost any city in the United States, except for down in the southern tip of Florida. This is not a drill. This is really happening. China is preparing for nuclear war, and so is Russia. I'm telling you guys, China is not screwing around. The mainstream media is barely reporting on this here in the United States. The Chinese are not going to sit by and do nothing while America comes over there and pops off cruise missiles in their neighborhood the way that we did it over in Syria. But again, that's one of the reasons that Donald Trump did this with the Chinese president over there trapped in America at the time. He wanted him to know, we are going to do this, and screw you if you don't like it. We're tough and we'll take you on. That's his message to China. But guys, these communist Chinese are crazy people. They may not initiate war very often, but with the size population they have more than enough people to spare, more than enough men, vastly overly populated number of men who can be sacrificed. The communists don't care. They don't care how many of their people get killed. They've got more than they can deal with financially. It would be a blessing in disguise to them to be able to get rid of some of these men who are not married, because remember, the one child China policy, all these people, we've got a whole generation where they have chosen to have boys as their one child instead of girls to carry on the family name and so forth. But they've got all these men who can't marry. They don't have enough work for them. So this would be a solution. Don't think that China is not willing to go to war, because they will. Now, back in February, I spoke with this French journalist, and he had told me back then that China's military was practicing drills that simulated preemptive missile strikes against U.S. bases in Japan, in Okinawa, and in Guam. And these simulations were using what's called a carrier killer ballistic missile. These ballistic missiles can take out American aircraft carriers. China has been very angry for a long time now at the U.S. meddling in the East and South China Seas. So China is not flat-footed. We are not catching them off guard. They have already been preparing for war for a good while now. Guys, Donald Trump became rich by the practice of leveraging large amounts of credit, something that involves substantial risk. And sometimes this risk paid off, and he made huge profits from it. But at other times, his gambles didn't turn out the way that he hoped, which is one reason that he had a string of bankruptcies. It sure looks to me like what's in the mind of Donald Trump right now is he's using that same risk-taking approach to how he's handling foreign policy. He's putting all of his chips on black, spinning the roulette wheel, and waiting to see if it comes out on black, to see if he's going to make the big money. But this is not a game. He is not simply gambling money here. He's playing with the lives of millions of Americans. What are we little people going to do about it? Well, I'll tell you, there are a lot of things we could try to do, but we are very short on time. So I'm going to tell you what I hope you'll do first, and that is to join with me in contacting the White House and your representatives in Congress to express outrage at what Trump is doing. This is gambling with our lives. Here's the phone number to the White House. Call them at 202-456-1111. If you prefer to email, you can go to whitehouse.gov/contact. Whether you call or write, all you really need to communicate is that you expect for the president to back off from these military engagements that have not been approved by the U.S. Congress. We want this to go to Congress. We want there to be debate so that we, the people, have a chance through our representatives to communicate our thoughts and at least have a discussion about the pros and cons of these military actions. Donald Trump is acting like a dictator. He is ignoring the Constitution. The right and power to declare war is with the Congress, and the president has to He is supposed to carry out the instructions of Congress. That's how it's supposed to work. The president is not supposed to go initiate wars because he thinks it's the right thing to do. The president can go and ask for a declaration of war because he thinks it's necessary, but he has to wait for Congress to declare war before he goes to war. And if you guys don't think, if you don't consider what he did to Syria an act of war, just turn it around and think about it. What if Syria came over here to the United States, flew their jets over? I live in North Carolina. We've got the Johnson Air Force Base. What if Syria came over here, flew into U.S. territory without permission of our government, actually in defiance of our government, dropped a bunch of Tomahawk cruise? Well, I guess they shot them off from the carriers, actually from the Navy carriers. Same difference though. An attack on our Air Force Base, blowing it up, killing not only members of the Air Force, but civilians, including 4 American children. Would you consider that to be an act of war? Yes or no? Would you say, those Syrians, those guys, what a bunch of jerks. Well, I'm going to go back to Facebook now. No, you would be saying, that's it, we're going to go kill those people. This is war, right? So we cannot expect them to feel any different than how we would feel in the same situation. What Trump did was a unilateral act of war without the approval of Congress. And now he is getting ready to do the same thing to North Korea, possibly to even change the regime there in North Korea. Whether we attack Syria again or North Korea, we have Russia and Iran who have said if we attack Syria again, they are going to go to war with us. If we go into North Korea and try and topple that regime, China is prepared to go to war. And remember, China and Russia are nuclear powers who have both said they are willing to use nukes in their fight against us. So we are very legitimately talking about the possibility of World War III breaking out in the next few weeks if Donald Trump does not have a leash put around his neck and get pulled back by the U.S. Congress. That's why we need to communicate to the White House and to the Congress what needs to be done. I want to go ahead and play my last phone call that I made to the White House so that you guys can see how quick and easy it is to do it. Here's my call.
Good afternoon. This is the White House comment phone. I'll be happy to take your brief comments, sir. Right.
Yes, my name is Jake Morphonios. I'm contacting you to express my very strong conviction that President Trump is overstepping his authority. He is risking war on multiple fronts without the consent of Congress or the people, and that's very dangerous. Continued abuse of that authority given him as president is grounds for impeachment. So I would like for it to be conveyed to the president that we the people expect him to obey the U.S. Constitution and seek congressional approval before he carries out any other military strikes, especially against North Korea or any further actions in Syria.
I understand what you said. I have noted your concerns, and I certainly will forward that to the office of the president. Absolutely.
All right, very good. Well, thank you so much. The only difficult part of the call was that I had to wait about 10 minutes to get through. If you guys feel nervous, just write down 2 or 3 sentences that you want to communicate to the White House in the call. What happens when you call is that the operators take the message that they receive, they enter it into a database, and it's compiled into major topics and positions. Those positions are then tallied, and they're given to a particular White House advisor. Depending on the urgency of the topic, the advisor will be able to brief the president on the attitude and disposition of the American people. So the advisor may say something like this: Mr. President, 100,000 Americans have expressed support this week for your military actions toward North Korea, and 325,000 have expressed strong disapproval. More than half of those who disapprove say that they would call for impeachment if you continue to act without congressional approval. So basically, calling the White House, this is like a big polling system. It's not perfect, but the maxim is true that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If we want to be able to influence the president, we have to make some noise, and just doing it on Twitter isn't sufficient. Come on, guys, these are the times that try men's souls. Are you a summer soldier or are you a patriot? It's time to pick up our phones and try to make a difference. For ongoing coverage of this story, please subscribe to my channel now. For the End Times News Report, I'm Jake Morphonios.